What interests me in comparing Svelte, the UI framework, to other frameworks such as and libraries such as React.js and Vue, it's more of the syntax. How does it feel to actually write an application? Because when you look at the comparisons, you see in general the community, how many users, how to install it, what is the background, like what is one compiled, how fast is it. But it shows also some snippets, but you don't really get the feeling of what it is to write in one framework versus another, because there are tons of resources that show you all these aspects, like how happy are the users, the Google Trends, how many have installed, but how does it actually feel to write an app? So needless to say, I didn't write any app in either. Not in Vue and not in Svelte and not in React, but it raised my curiosity, so I did some reading and I'll summarize it in general for you. How does it feel to write some code in Svelte versus React versus maybe Vue? So as it appears, both have the notion of a main. In Svelte it's the app.svelte, and in React it could be the app.js. When I look basically on these two files, I can tell you that the app.svelte looks much more like HTML. It contains a script tag, it contains tail, and then it contains tags, just like HTML. And then I also see on Svelte that when it prints something to the screen, then it's a notation that is looking like a macro. It's $item, okay, or $first name in curly braces. So it looks, I think, nicer in this aspect rather than the app.js that I see in React, where I see many imports, much more. I also see function app, things which I fully don't see in Svelte. So in React, you also use function app. Okay, so you could get along with this. In general, it looks in React, at least the app.js looks less like HTML. So I think at least in this aspect, it looks like Svelte is nicer. Okay, at least in this aspect. Next, I look at some code that mutates some data. Both have apparently the concept of a store. So in this case, it's in both like store.js, both in Svelte and React. The code in Svelte is smaller. In addition, in the React code, you see many export cons. You don't see that much in the Svelte. The code in React is bigger. In React, you see return of a string JSX. In Svelte not. It looks more like JavaScript. In general, I think that the code in React looks a little bit more complex, but not too much. Not too much. There is a consumer on the React. There is no such thing in Svelte. I think the Svelte also wins here in mutating some items in the store. It looks simpler, but not that great of a difference to say this is a revolution, okay? Also in the above item of app.svelte and app.js, the syntax is not that super different to say this is a revolution or something. The syntax is pretty close, I think, with a slight advantage to Svelte, which appears to be simpler. Next, I look at how you iterate a list. Let's say you have some kind of a list and you want to print it on screen. Again, the code in Svelte appears to be simpler. However, you use some kind of a macro. You have like each item. So you use some kind of a macro where you iterate the items. It's not JavaScript. It may be a layer on top of JavaScript, but it's more of a macro where you iterate. If you're familiar with the templating languages, such as Mustache and others, then it's reminding it, if you like writing some macros to iterate items, this is very nice. In the React, it looks more like JavaScript. You use the map function on the list. You iterate each item. It looks again a little bit more complex. But if you prefer writing plain JavaScript rather than some macro that would iterate the items, then React would win here. So again, it's more of a matter of taste, nothing super special here. I think I would prefer the macro style. It looks simpler. However, there is the disadvantage that it's not plain JavaScript. Next, we look at how you take a value from the UI and store it in the context. So in Svelte, again, I have to say that it looks simpler. You just import your store and then you do store.addItem with the value that you have. And in React, you need to use context and then use state and some other magical functions. So again, it's not that big difference, but I think that Svelte wins here as well for the syntax because it looks simpler to do these kind of things. Also, it looks much more like HTML. The code is less complex. I have to say that it wins here. So it looks like in general writing code in Svelte versus React. It looks a little bit easier, at least for someone that never coded anything in any of these technologies. I just looked at some snippets from the internet. There is still some templating in Svelte, like ampersand each, ampersand if, which in React you use the plain JavaScript. So it really depends which style you prefer. I like the macros. I have no problem with them. So looking at above, I think my main considerations in choosing Svelte versus React would only be if React wins big in the number of components. I'm not sure due to the recent hype. My main concern with Svelte is whether it's going to be gone or whether there is not enough attention to it, but I think there is enough attention to it. So I think if I had some personal project and I needed to choose some framework, if I wanted to choose at all for a personal project, because for a personal project you can just use jQuery JavaScript, but if I wanted to use something maybe to learn, I think I would choose Svelte in this case because it's look a little bit simpler, at least from syntax wise. I'm not interested at all at performance stuff like this. I'm more interested in the amount of ready-made components and the amount of support. I think it has enough support and components probably because I hear about it a lot. So this was in general my conclusion. However, if you already use and know React, I don't see any reason whatsoever except for performance etc. But the whole world is basically written in React. So there is no reason whatsoever to move. I don't see, at least from syntax wise, no reason to move. You will get some disadvantages if you are familiar with one. The whole world is using React. There is no reason. If I needed to choose something for myself, I would probably choose Svelte because it looks simpler. And for my mini side project, I think it would do a nice job. That's it. Nothing that serious. So I think this was very interesting. Thank you for listening and see you next time.